search continues. It's not for a specific player. I don't think it's even for a specific position. It's for a specific trade, and it is, well, let's just say for right now that it's more Ben Kendall. Good morning to you. Good. Tuesday morning, I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins opened development camp yesterday in Cranberry. The first 4 days of this event aren't going to show a whole lot about anybody. They're drills that aren't aimed really at evaluations or testing or offering the prospects an opportunity to impress. That really won't come until Friday when they have the annual development camp scrimmage, and even that of late has been 3-on-3. We'll see about this one. But regardless of the format or the nature of what's happening on the ice all week, what Kyle Dubas, Jason Spezza, and their staff want, and I shouldn't even say want, need, is high-end skill. And you don't always know when you're going to get high-end skill. You can hope for it in certain settings, like when they drafted Kendall, fully aware, as everyone was, of his hockey IQ. There were questions about his strength at the time, his skating to a degree, even his stamina. And he took care of all that in a big hurry in the 2 months between development camp and actual training camp. To be honest here, he actually looked like a different player. And given the headiness of some of the things that Kendall can do on the rink, I do see him as having a high-end skill ceiling. Now, I know he's not going to get mentioned along with, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard. I'm sure he won't be with Gavin McKenna either once that kid gets going on wrecking his career up in Toronto. But Kendall's got that. Kendall's got that ceiling where he can put up a lot of points and do a lot of good things for a really long time in the National Hockey League. And keeping all of this on the up and up, there's not an abundance of that in the Penguins organization. Still, there's more than there was. There's actually quite a bit more than there was, but it's nowhere near enough not to come up with 6 forwards who can legitimately be seen as significant scorers going into the future, the more distant future, the post-Sid future. In fact, my current count on those players, at least when I say count, I mean like you can stamp it in cement, is 2. I've got Kendall and I've got Yegor Chinakhov. If Sid is gone, Evgeny Malkin will have been long gone. I can't know what would happen with Ricard Raquel and Brian Rust. I'm going to start carrying this conversation into silly season. But I'm talking about younger players that I know are going to be part of that mix, or at least compete realistically to be part of that mix. So I can say, listen, old Bill Zonon, had a goal in each of his first 3 AHL games, and he's still super young, and he can play center, and he's got the size and everything. Okay, doesn't matter. Not until you see him doing things in an NHL setting, which he hasn't been able to do yet. Largely because he was hurt last offseason. I can't say that about Will Horkoff, the other first-rounder of the 3 from last year, because Horkoff's played in college. He's at this development camp, but he's not going to be able to take any kind of physical contact, so he's just here for the orientation. I can look at Ville Koivunen. I can recall some really good things that he did with his initial NHL call-up. I can recall some really lousy things he did to open this past season in the NHL. I can pretty much put him on the same plateau as Rutger McGroarty. I can like both of them, and I do. I can admire both of them and the effort and the team-oriented nature of their play. But to be fitting into some sort of high-end skill trajectory, you got to start scoring, and you got to start scoring a lot. So now we have Liam Ruck and, of course, his twin brother, Marcus. Liam was the first rounder. Liam is more of the shooter and Marcus is more of the passer. Liam is seen by the Penguins, as he's been seen by the industry, as the more talented of the two, partly because of his superior skating. Tom Kostopoulos, the former NHLer who is now the Penguins' director of player development, was about as frank as you would ever want anybody to be on that subject after this session yesterday.
Yeah, I think, if you talk about the Ruck brothers a bit individually, I think Liam can get up and down the ice a little bit quicker. He's got some speed. He's got some separation speed. Just building the strength. I think he's got a tremendous shot. He's able to find space in the O-zone and finish plays and score goals. So building the strength, I think as the strength and power come, his skating will get even better. Marcus, on the other hand, from what I've seen, is incredible playmaker, really intelligent out there. He probably needs a little more work in the skating department, and as he builds the strength and works on the technique of the skating, I think his game will really come along, just to add that separation speed and be able to get to areas and win a few more races out there.
Now, some of that is standard stuff, and it shouldn't be taken as anything alarming. When people who are in development roles in the NHL say that so-and-so needs to work on their skating, it doesn't mean that they're deficient. It doesn't mean that they can't improve. In fact, more and more, what you hear from them, including in their intonation, is that they believe that it can be and will be improved. There's now lots of knowledge, lots of experience, lots of background with the people who instruct skating, who learn how to lengthen strides, how to make certain turns, how to alter someone's focus on balance so that they're going not only faster in a straight line, but also capable of doing lots of other things laterally and in tight quarters. And he's going to have to forgive me for this, but nobody should know this better than TK himself. Kostopoulos, I covered him as a player, and he was with the Penguins, and he could score. He could do a lot of good things, and he would make a lot of his plays, create a lot of his offense from a virtual standstill. Think of when Kevin Hayes is really on his game. Like, remember the last couple of games of the regular season when Hayes was the Penguins' very best player? Those games that really didn't mean a whole heck of a lot, the one in St. Louis and wherever. Hayes was just owning the rink, and he's never really had to be super mobile to get that done. Kostopoulos was a different type of player. He was more of a net front guy, a grit guy, but he would put up points. Well, he pushed himself as hard as anybody to become a better skater and eventually became a consistent NHL contributor, albeit in Montreal. So he knows, he's been there. A lot of other folks have been there. They also understand, very much so, that when you get players in the first round of a draft, whether or not they've got a twin brother sitting right behind them high in the second round, you've got to make the most of that potential for high-end skill. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Ed, who asks, DK, considering the plan that the Penguins have in place for building this organization and how it's being executed and how it's been communicated to everybody, Kyle Dubas is the best general manager any Pittsburgh team has had since blank? ? Must feel like this is a game show now and you need to have some clock going. Do, 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 do. The best general manager has had. Okay, the Pirates have the worst general manager, maybe in all of sports, but I couldn't know that. But Ben Cherington stands all alone, and he has miraculously been able to hold his position since late 2019. This is year 7 for him. So to go before him, you'd have to go to Neil Huntington, and there were a couple of bright spots in the Huntington tenure, but there was also a lot that wasn't so good. If I'm looking at the Steelers, I'm looking at Omar Khan, who I think has done a terrific job to date on a lot of fronts. He's had a couple of blind spots, if you will, not being able to commit enough to addressing the wide receiver position, at least until this past offseason. But he's had solid drafts. He's made solid trades, carried himself the way you'd want somebody to in that specific position with that specific franchise. So I'm afraid the answer that I'm going to give you is a little bit boring, because I'm just going to say he's been the best since Jim Rutherford, because Ron Hextall, if you take away the Ricard Raquel trade, was just a catastrophic mess as GM. And that's not to minimize the co-damage that his co-conspirator Brian Burke did by his side. So we can skip those guys and go right back to JR, because all JR did was win you a couple of Stanley Cups. And with those cups, his fingerprints came on so many of the major moves that brought them about. I could actually go on this subject for a while, but let's just say that JR brought Patrick Hornqvist and Phil Kessel and Carl Hagelin and Justin Schultz and Ian Cole and Matt Cullen, and I could do this. I'm going to get bogged down in this subject. But, and I do have a sincere but to this, Ed, Dubas hasn't won anything yet here. And I don't mean not winning the Stanley Cup. I mean he hasn't won a playoff round. Now, for the record, he was hired 3 years and a month ago, June 1, 2023. As a result, he's overseen now, obviously, 3 full NHL seasons. So I'm not sitting here suggesting that he should have won a playoff round by now. Quite the contrary, I think we would all agree that what happened this past season was way more of a surprise than anyone could have expected, possibly including Dubas. And from there, it's fair to recall that Dubas committed his first season to giving the core and everybody else that one big final opportunity to make a go of it. Even brought in Erik Karlsson, partly for that purpose. So he's now had 2 years of what would be considered in some interpretations a rebuild. I really don't look at it that way, but some might. But where the priority was to, yes, keep infusing new players, keep making them younger as well. Don't part with draft picks, don't overpay older players, and just keep all of that going. What I don't like to ever do, Ed, is to pass out trophies for potential. I'm not one of those people who gets super stoked about prospects. I want to see what they can do in the NHL. I'm also not going to be super stoked about what Dubas can do until we see whether or not he can handle it at the highest level of hockey competition. Any executive will tell you it's a different type of GMing in the NHL or in any league. It takes some serious stones, for lack of a more couthful way to word that. Some of the stuff that JR did while he was here, I don't know how many GMs would have had those stones. I mean, James Neal for Patrick Hornqvist alone was the stones of stones deal that almost everybody everywhere, not me, and I have it on record, panned. Everyone hated that deal. But JR crushed it. Hornqvist came here and was a culture changer for this franchise. In addition to, by the way, outscoring Neal for the remainder of their respective careers from that point onward. I don't know that stuff, so I'm not going to be reaching for the flowers here. It sounds like you might be, and that's your right. It's okay, but I'm nowhere near that. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. And remember, please, that we have a double shot of Penguins coming your way. That'll be today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live on our YouTube channel. We'll be joined by Taylor Haas, our beat reporter, who will be covering day 2 of development camp, so you won't want to miss that. That's on our YouTube channel, again, which is called DK Pittsburgh Sports Penguins. You'll have an easy time finding it. Hope to have you there.